The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when the last whispers of daily life drifted across town name. Children's laughter, once echoing through narrow cobblestone streets, had faded into the soft hum of evening. Doors creaked as families settled in, shutters clanging against the wind. On that final night, no one suspected the quiet darkness would soon swallow the town whole. It was a night that seemed ordinary at first glance. The blacksmith hammered a final piece of iron, the baker's oven glowed warmly behind frosted windows, and a lantern swayed gently in the wind outside the town hall. But for those who would later recall this night in fragments, in scraps of memory, it was laced with subtle oddities. A cat darted through the alleyways in frantic, unnatural patterns. The river, usually murky and calm, reflected the moon with an almost metallic sheen. And above it all, a hum, low and vibrating, lingered in the air, though no one could pinpoint its source. Families gathered around tables. Mothers ladled soup, fathers poured ale, children played with scraps of wood and string. Yet, a strange unease had begun to creep into the town's hearts. The clocks ticked a little too slowly, and candles flickered as if pushed by invisible fingers. Neighbors glanced at each other with subtle concern, sharing unspoken worries that would later become questions they could never answer. In the inn, travelers had arrived from distant towns, unaware of the peculiar energy gripping this small settlement. They drank quietly, recounting mundane tales, never noticing the glances exchanged between the townsfolk, glances heavy with something unspoken. No one mentioned the faint tremor that had shaken the earth earlier that evening, nor the shadows that seemed to linger a moment too long on every surface. And then there were the small disappearances, subtle at first. A pair of shoes left by the riverbank, a lantern abandoned on a doorstep, a note scrawled in trembling ink that read only, "Don't go outside." No one thought much of it, until morning would reveal that no one was left to ponder it at all. The wind carried sounds of the night, the hoot of an owl, the creak of timber, the whispering rustle of leaves. But beneath these natural noises, a stillness settled, dense and impenetrable. It was the kind of silence that presses against your chest, that makes you hold your breath even as your lungs demand air. Outside the town, shepherds noticed their flocks behaving oddly, huddled and restless, as if sensing the unseeable. The few travelers who ventured close enough later described a shimmering haze over the town, a mirage-like distortion that made it appear farther away than it truly was. No one saw them leave. No footsteps were traced, no carts packed, no fires doused. Yet by the next dawn, the town stood empty, untouched, but eerily abandoned. Doors hung open. Plates still held remnants of last night's meals. Beds bore the impression of bodies that would never return. It was as though the town itself had exhaled and vanished into the morning light. And then, from the surrounding hills, the first whispers began. Stories of townspeople seen in the forest shadows, glimpses of lantern light in places no map marked, and strange shapes moving beneath the fog. The world beyond town name held its breath, unaware that a mystery was unfolding, one that would baffle investigators for decades and haunt every soul who dared ask, where did they go? The last night anyone saw them left behind nothing tangible, nothing explainable. Only the memory of laughter, the faint hum in the air, and the lingering feeling that the town had slipped through reality itself, leaving behind questions that would never be fully answered. And as the camera would later pan across empty streets and silent hearths, viewers would feel the weight of that night pressing against them, a slow and inescapable dread. Something unimaginable had happened here, and it was just the beginning. Long before the night that swallowed the town whole, town name had a history steeped in whispers, secrets, and unexplained occurrences. Nestled in the valley between jagged hills and dense forests, it was a settlement that outsiders often bypassed, drawn instead to more prosperous towns. Yet those who did arrive could never shake the feeling that the town itself watched them, as if the cobblestone streets and timbered houses were not merely structures, but sentient witnesses to every step they took. The founding of town name was shrouded in ambiguity. Historical records suggest it was established in the late 1700s by a group of settlers seeking isolation, men and women who carried secrets from distant cities, families fleeing debts, crimes, or political persecution. Some historians theorize that the town had been deliberately positioned atop an old mine, abandoned for reasons that were never fully documented. Others believe that the land had long been sacred to a local indigenous tribe, a place meant to remain untouched, its significance forgotten as the settlers carved their homes from the wilderness. Despite its mysterious origins, the town quickly developed a self-sufficient, almost insular community. Trade with neighboring villages was limited, outsiders were tolerated, but never fully welcomed. The town had rules that were more than laws, they were traditions passed down orally, enforced not through formal authority but through social pressure and the weight of unspoken expectation. Children were warned never to explore the forest beyond the eastern ridge. Visitors were told to respect the wells and the old mines, even though no one could explain why. Elders spoke of rituals conducted long before the settlers arrived, their meanings lost but their power respected. At the heart of the town stood the old town hall, a building whose timber beams bore carvings that no one fully understood. Some claimed they depicted events that had not yet happened, symbols foretelling misfortune, or warnings against greed and pride. Every year, during the autumn festival, a single candle would be lit in the hall's main chamber and left burning overnight, a tradition whose origin had been lost but whose practice was rigorously maintained. Breaking this ritual was unthinkable. Those who dared, whether accidentally or out of defiance, reported feeling uneasy for days afterward, their dreams haunted by shadows and murmurs they could not explain. Yet, for all its charm, the town had always harbored an undercurrent of fear. Stranger disappearances, minor fires, livestock gone without trace, these were recorded in the town's diaries and ledgers, often dismissed as the natural misfortunes of rural life. But locals knew better. There were stories of families moving in only to vanish within a generation, of children who claimed to hear voices beneath the ground, and of miners who returned from tunnels pale, trembling, and unwilling to speak of what they had seen. Those tales, dismissed by outsiders as folklore, were never questioned within the town, they were accepted as part of life, and as warnings best heeded. What made town name unique, and ultimately doomed, was the way its secrets intertwined with daily life. Every corner, every alley, and every home carried an unspoken history, a past layered with fear, superstition, and silent pacts. People didn't simply live there, they survived within the parameters of rituals, rules, and habits that outsiders could neither understand nor break. A stranger's curiosity was dangerous, a child's disobedience perilous, and yet the town flourished for decades in its own secluded bubble, seemingly immune to the outside world. As the years passed, the town's isolation became more pronounced. Roads fell into disrepair, letters went unanswered, and maps gradually omitted its existence. Visitors who did arrive noted the oddity of its perfectly maintained houses set against the eerie silence of streets that felt older than any living memory. The town seemed to resist time itself, frozen in an uneasy equilibrium where every shadow could conceal a story, and every smile might hide a warning. This sense of unease, of history pressing down on the present, would later become crucial in understanding the town's sudden disappearance. The settlers' secrets, what they had brought with them, what they had discovered, and what they had chosen to hide, formed the invisible framework of a mystery that no outsider could fully grasp. It was as if the town's very foundation had been laid on uncertainty, suspicion, and fear, setting the stage for the unimaginable events that would unfold centuries later. Even now, long after the town vanished, historians and investigators trace the faint echoes of its origins, the carved symbols, the abandoned mines, the hushed warnings in forgotten journals. Every discovery hints at a larger truth, one that suggests town name was never just a place to live, it was a town built deliberately on secrets, a community designed to contain something beyond comprehension. And it is within these secrets that the story of its final night begins, creeping inexorably toward the moment when the town, and all who lived there, would vanish overnight, leaving nothing behind but silence, questions, and the chilling sense that the past itself had conspired to swallow them whole. Long before the town disappeared, there were whispers, faint, fragmented, almost dismissible, that something lay beneath town name. It began subtly, as most things do, in the hum of the wind through the trees and the echoing drip of water in the old mines. Miners spoke of strange vibrations, a low thrumming beneath their feet, as though the earth itself were alive and aware. Livestock went missing inexplicably, often near the outskirts of town where the soil had been disturbed or where old tunnels yawned beneath the surface. At first, the elders explained these as natural occurrences, predator attacks, unstable terrain, or superstition. But the repetition and the strangeness of the events gradually gnawed at the town's consciousness. The earliest documented account came from a miner named Elias Harker, whose journal entries survive in fragments. On the evening of July 12, he wrote, "The walls of the tunnel whispered my name. I swear I heard them call to me, though no one else was there. I cannot return tomorrow." When fellow miners questioned him, he insisted that he had felt eyes beneath the ground, unseen and patient, watching, waiting. The men laughed nervously, attributing it to exhaustion and poor ventilation, but his unease left a residue, an invisible tension in the minds that no one could shake. As the years progressed, the anomalies increased. Farmers reported hearing scraping sounds beneath their barns, persistent vibrations that sometimes caused dishes to rattle and furniture to tremble. Children spoke of shadows moving under the floorboards at night, and the town dogs would howl at nothing visible. One elderly woman recalled waking to the sound of her husband's voice calling from below the house, only to find him sleeping beside her. Notes and letters began surfacing, written in panic, claiming, "They are under the ground. I can hear them breathing." Though dismissed publicly, these writings circulated quietly among families, passed from parent to child, a kind of oral folklore with terrifying undertones. By the mid-1800s, the town's well-established pattern of secrets had begun to intersect with these subterranean mysteries. There were rumors that the original settlers had discovered tunnels far older than their town, possibly remnants of a previous civilization or natural caverns imbued with unknown energy. Few dared to explore them, and those who did rarely returned in the same state. Some came back pale, silent, and distant, others simply disappeared, leaving behind only lanterns and tools, eerily untouched as if the tunnels themselves had swallowed them whole. Local legends flourished around these underground passages. Parents warned children never to venture near the old wells or the cracked mine entrances. One tale spoke of the silent watchers, shadowy figures glimpsed at the edges of vision, vanishing whenever approached. Another told of a humming sound that could make one lose their bearings, drawing wanderers deeper and deeper, until they became part of the tunnels themselves. The elders, though tight-lipped, occasionally referenced ceremonies and markers intended to keep whatever resided below in check, though they never explained their exact purpose. Outsiders hearing these stories dismissed them as quaint superstition, but the townspeople's fear was genuine, palpable, and suffused into the very air of town name. Visitors occasionally reported minor but unnerving phenomena. Travelers passing through the town in the 19th century recorded odd occurrences, lanterns flickering as they walked down empty streets, unexplained shadows under doors, and a sensation of being watched from below. One traveler, documenting his journey, wrote, "I felt the earth itself breathing, as though it remembered us before we arrived and judged us accordingly." Such accounts were rare and scattered, often dismissed in formal history, but for those who lived in the town, the feeling was constant, a low hum at the edge of consciousness that never fully dissipated. It was not only human perception that bore witness. Instruments left in abandoned wells and mines often registered strange readings. Water levels fluctuated unpredictably, compasses spun erratically, and animals acted as if sensing something invisible. The town's records, which had been painstakingly maintained over decades, occasionally included cryptic references to the pulse beneath, or the hidden breath of the land. Though historians have debated their meaning, the inhabitants clearly believed in a force beneath them, something powerful, patient, and utterly unknowable. As generations passed, these subterranean phenomena became integrated into the town's identity. Festivals, rituals, and daily routines subtly incorporated practices meant to respect or ward off the unseen presence. Candles were placed near wells, offerings left at mine entrances, and children were taught songs and rhymes meant to appease whatever existed below. To outsiders, it might have seemed quaint or eccentric, but to the town, these practices were protective measures, survival mechanisms passed down like precious heirlooms. Breaking these customs was considered dangerous, not merely socially, but existentially. And yet, as the town grew more insulated, the boundary between ordinary life and the mystery beneath became increasingly fragile. The very earth beneath town names seemed to pulse with anticipation, a slow and inexorable pressure building under streets and homes alike. Diaries, letters, and whispered confessions speak of nights when the humming was so loud it could be felt in the chest, dreams of being pulled downward, and glimpses of shadows moving under floorboards with purposeful intent. The subterranean presence was patient, methodical, and observant, but never overt, at least, not until the final night. The whispers beneath the ground, initially dismissed as superstition, had slowly evolved into an undeniable reality. Every disappearance, every tremor, every unexplained shadow was a fragment of a larger, terrifying truth. And though the townspeople continued their lives above ground, maintaining appearances of normalcy, the stage was set. The earth itself seemed to conspire with the unseen forces beneath, preparing for the night when town name would vanish entirely. By understanding these subtle signs, investigators and historians today can begin to trace the threads of a mystery that culminated in an event so shocking, so complete, that it left no survivors, no struggle, and no explanation. The whispers beneath the ground were not just echoes of the past, they were the prelude to a disappearance that would confound generations, a silent warning that went unheeded until it was too late. The town, built on secrets and fear, had finally come to meet the hidden force that had always lingered beneath its streets, shaping its fate long before anyone could comprehend what was happening. And as we prepare to examine the events of that night, it becomes chillingly clear, whatever waited below was patient, meticulous, and unimaginably ancient. For years, the town name had carried an undercurrent of unease, whispered in private and recorded in diaries, yet the first unmistakable signs of imminent catastrophe were subtle and easily overlooked. It began with small anomalies, the kind that most townsfolk could dismiss as coincidence or fatigue. Livestock disappeared without trace, sometimes found days later miles away, appearing unharmed but disoriented. Tools left outside vanished and reappeared in impossible locations, as if guided by unseen hands. Doors once securely latched were found wide open at dawn. These occurrences, individually, might have seemed trivial. Collectively, however, they began to hint at something more sinister, an invisible force reshaping the fabric of the town in ways no one could fully understand. Families began to notice behavioral changes in their neighbors. People would appear in the morning with pale faces, their eyes hollow and expressionless, as though they had spent the night witnessing something no one should see. Conversations became strained and halting, casual greetings were replaced with wary glances. Children began speaking in hushed tones about things beneath the ground, shadows in their bedrooms, and whispers that came when no one else was present. One mother, recalling her son's terrified expression, wrote in her journal, "He points to the floor and says they are watching us from below. I thought it was a game, but now I am not so certain." Reports from the miners intensified. Tunnels that had been stable for decades suddenly collapsed or shifted inexplicably. Miners described hearing faint chants or the rhythmic beating of a distant drum deep within the rock, always in places far beyond any natural echo. Some swore they glimpsed figures moving within the darkness, but when others followed their path, the tunnels appeared empty. Even the most experienced miners admitted that the sensations of being observed, of something brushing against their consciousness, could not be explained by superstition alone. They began keeping personal journals, documenting every tremor, strange sound, and hallucination, leaving behind records that would later puzzle investigators and historians alike. Illnesses, too, began to manifest in ways that defied explanation. Families reported fevers, nausea, and sudden fainting spells, often in clusters within households or along entire streets. Physicians from neighboring towns were called in but could find no cause. Herbs, tonics, and traditional remedies proved ineffective. Some victims spoke of dreams of tunnels filled with glowing symbols and voices calling their names before they fell ill. Others claimed that the walls of their homes seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if alive. Even skeptics began to whisper, "There is something in the town that cannot be cured by medicine or reason." Letters and diary entries provide a chilling glimpse into the psychological toll of these early warning signs. One woman wrote, "The children no longer play in the streets. They huddle together and watch the ground as though it might open beneath them. My husband speaks less, and when he does, it is only to mutter warnings I do not understand. Something is coming, and I fear we are powerless to stop it." Another entry, penned by a local teacher, recounts, "I see the fear in their eyes every morning. Not just the children, but the adults too. We pretend everything is normal, but the ground hums with a secret that will not remain hidden." Whispers of disappearing neighbors began to circulate. People who had gone out in the early evening failed to return. Footsteps leading into the forest were never found again. Occasionally, a distant scream would echo from the edge of town, but by the time anyone investigated, there was nothing to follow, no bodies, no footprints, no evidence that anyone had been there at all. Panic began to thread its way through the community, but it was tempered by disbelief. How could a town of this size simply vanish? How could people disappear without a trace? Most rational explanations failed, and those brave enough to suggest alternatives were quickly dismissed as paranoid. Amid the growing unease, some townspeople began documenting what they could, secretly recording the strange events and anomalies in meticulous detail. They photographed strange lights at night, drew maps of tunnels and well locations, and compiled lists of missing items and animals. What is remarkable is the consistency of these accounts across decades, even though they were written by unrelated individuals. This pattern suggests not only a persistent phenomenon but also an awareness among the townspeople that something greater than themselves was influencing their lives, a force that respected no single household, no one individual, and no single profession. By the summer preceding the final night, the sense of dread had become almost tangible. Residents reported hearing a low hum beneath the streets, so deep it resonated in their bones. Windows rattled without wind, shadows stretched unnaturally long, and lights flickered across homes as if tracing invisible patterns. Children spoke of seeing faint figures moving through walls and floors, while pets refused to enter certain areas of the town. It was as though the town itself were preparing for an event of unfathomable scale, awakening the very earth beneath its foundations. Even the town's elders, who had long maintained their traditions and rituals, admitted privately that these signs were unprecedented. Old superstitions and ceremonies that had always sufficed to protect the town now seemed powerless. The symbols carved in the town hall, the candles lit on festival nights, and the offerings left at wells and mine entrances, all appeared insufficient to halt the growing force that had made itself known. Their confidence gave way to fear, and their fear quietly spread to every corner of the community, infecting conversations and actions, even as they struggled to maintain the facade of normal life. In hindsight, historians note that these early signs, minor disappearances, strange illnesses, unexplained phenomena, and behavioral anomalies, were part of a pattern leading inexorably to the town's sudden vanishing. What began as subtle hints became undeniable warnings, yet even then, the residents of Town Name could not fully comprehend the magnitude of what awaited them. The story of these first signs serves as a chilling reminder of how ordinary life can quietly unravel, leaving behind traces that seem almost inconsequential until it is far too late to act. By the time the night of the disappearance arrived, these signs had coalesced into a tension that gripped every street, every home, and every individual in the town. The people of Town Name had been living on the edge of an invisible precipice for years, barely aware of the depth of the abyss beneath them. The subtle warnings, the whispers, and the unexplained phenomena all pointed toward a force that was patient, deliberate, and ready to consume the town entirely. And though no one could predict exactly when or how it would happen, the evidence of those first signs makes one truth undeniable: the town's disappearance was not sudden, nor random. It had been gestating for generations, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment to strike. The night that swallowed Town Name was unlike any the surrounding countryside had ever known. On the evening of the disappearance, the sky was unusually still, an oppressive calm settling over the valley. Winds, normally persistent in this region, were absent. The air was thick, heavy, and silent, disturbed only by the faint hum that had haunted the town for months, a vibration felt beneath the bones, as though the earth itself was inhaling and holding its breath. Residents went about their routines, unaware that this night would become their last. In homes throughout the town, families gathered for dinner. The tables were laden with simple fare, bread, stew, a few roasted vegetables from the communal garden. Children played near the hearth, their laughter echoing against the walls. Lamps flickered as though responding to some unseen pulse, casting long, dancing shadows. Dogs and cats stirred uneasily, ears pressed back, growling softly at empty corners of rooms. It was subtle enough that a casual observer might have dismissed it, but those who lived there recognized the discomfort as familiar, a premonition that had been building for years, whispered in the tales of elders and miners alike. Neighbors peeked through windows, sharing wary glances, noting that the usual evening routine seemed off. A baker's oven remained warm well past its usual hours, and the town blacksmith abandoned his workbench mid-strike, stepping outside as if called by an invisible hand. Outside, the river glistened unnaturally, reflecting moonlight with an almost metallic sheen. The usual nighttime sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an owl, were muted, replaced by the omnipresent hum that vibrated through the streets, the houses, and the minds of all who dwelled there. As midnight approached, the anomalies intensified. Candles flickered violently, lights from lamps leapt across rooms. Shadows deepened, stretching unnaturally, bending in ways that defied the geometry of the homes. Footsteps were heard where no one walked, whispers emanated from empty hallways, and doors creaked open and closed on their own. A few residents ventured outside, drawn by the strange stillness and the eerie resonance in the air. They reported feeling a pull beneath their feet, as though the ground were gently tugging them downward. No one could explain the sensation, yet all agreed it was unmistakable and terrifying. Then, inexplicably, the town fell silent. Not just quiet, but a profound, unnatural stillness. No barking dogs, no creaking timber, no wind in the trees, only the subtle vibration beneath the earth, growing in intensity. This was not a sound that could be located or traced, it was felt in the chest, in the bones, in the heart. Residents who attempted to speak found their voices caught in their throats. Words failed. Some later described the sensation as being held by the earth itself, as though the ground had become a living entity, an immense predator observing its prey. By the early hours, the final moments of town name unfolded. There were no screams, no evidence of panic, no traces of struggle. People vanished from their beds, chairs, and streets as if the air itself had swallowed them. Objects remained untouched, dishes still contained the remnants of meals, beds bore the impressions of sleeping bodies, and fires smoldered quietly in hearths. The town appeared frozen in time, preserved in the moment just before its residents' lives ended or were taken elsewhere. One eyewitness account comes from a traveler who had stopped in a nearby hamlet. He reported seeing the glow of lanterns moving oddly along the streets, lights that seemed to drift above the cobblestones rather than illuminate them. Moments later, the town itself seemed to vanish from view, a mirage shimmering and fading into the night. The observer fled, terrified, and could not return the next day, for maps, locals, and terrain all suggested that the town had simply ceased to exist. Investigators who arrived in the days following the disappearance found a town that was eerily intact, almost unnatural in its preservation. Doors remained unlocked, windows intact, and belongings untouched. No signs of violence or struggle were present. Footprints were minimal, indicating no panicked escape. Animals that had not vanished were discovered wandering near the outskirts, behaving nervously as if sensing the same unseen force that had claimed the residents. It was as though the town had been erased, not destroyed, leaving behind only the faint hum in the soil and the lingering question, where had everyone gone? Later, forensics and historians examining the scene noted that several anomalies defied conventional explanation. Ground disturbances were detected in random patches, resembling subtle depressions, but there was no clear pattern or logical cause. Electromagnetic readings were off the charts in certain areas, particularly near the town center and around old wells and mines. Even modern investigators, relying on contemporary science and technology, were left confounded. The data suggested a force operating outside natural or human parameters, acting with precision, intent, and purpose. Adding to the mystery, one house remained. Unlike the rest of the town, this single residence appeared untouched not just in structure but in life. Candles were burning, food was warm, and a faint imprint of someone sitting at the table could be seen. Investigators speculated whether this was an intentional exception, a clue left behind, or something more sinister, a controlled observation point for whatever force had claimed the town. The presence of this house would haunt researchers for decades, a silent testimony to the incomprehensible events of that night. Locals who survived on the outskirts, or who were temporarily away from the town, later described vivid dreams and unsettling visions. Some recounted seeing the faces of neighbors flickering like images on a broken screen. Others claimed to hear faint voices calling from beneath the earth, whispering names, recounting private moments, or issuing warnings no one could fully interpret. These recollections, though anecdotal, contributed to the town's growing mythos, reinforcing the idea that town name had not merely disappeared, it had entered a domain beyond comprehension, accessible perhaps only to those it had chosen to consume. The Night of Silence, as it would later be called, left a profound mark on history. Not because of destruction or tragedy in the conventional sense, but because of its perfection, its impossibility, and its eerie quiet. No bodies, no struggle, no conventional evidence. Just a town and its people, swallowed by an unknown force, leaving behind questions that would baffle generations of investigators, scholars, and curious minds. And as the sun rose over the empty streets, the weight of absence pressed down on the valley, a reminder that whatever had taken town name was patient, deliberate, and fully aware of every heartbeat it claimed. It is in this night, more than any other moment in the town's history, that the mystery achieves its apex. Every preceding anomaly, every whispered warning, and every subtle tremor had built to this singular event, a disappearance so complete, so precise, that it challenged reality itself. The Night of Silence left behind not just an empty town, but a blueprint of dread that would guide every subsequent investigation, every haunting tale, and every desperate attempt to understand the impossible. For those who study it today, it serves as the first undeniable evidence that something beyond comprehension resided beneath the earth, waiting patiently, observing meticulously, and capable of erasing a town without leaving a trace. Amid the empty streets and abandoned homes of town name, investigators stumbled upon something that defied explanation, a single house, perfectly intact, standing in stark contrast to the surrounding silence. Unlike the other dwellings, where chairs remained pushed back from tables and dishes sat cold on counters, this house bore every sign of life having been present only moments ago. Candles flickered in the dim light, a hearth smoldered gently as though someone had just tended the fire, and food sat steaming on the table, untouched but warm. The incongruity was chilling. It was as if time itself had fractured, sparing this one building while the rest of the town vanished into oblivion. The house's exterior was unremarkable at first glance, blending with the architectural style of the other homes, weathered timber, stone foundations, and a small, neatly kept garden. But once inside, a subtle unease took hold. Objects were not merely in place, they seemed deliberately positioned. Chairs faced specific angles, books lay open on tables with certain pages highlighted, and the family portraits on the walls had eyes that seemed to follow intruders, almost too vividly for mere paint and varnish. The air inside was heavy, scented faintly with bread and herbs, but beneath it lingered something metallic, almost electric, that made hair rise on the back of the neck. Investigators noted that the house appeared untouched not just physically but temporally. A diary lay open, its last entry incomplete, as though the writer had been interrupted mid-sentence. A child's toy rested on the floor, still warm to the touch, suggesting human presence mere minutes prior. Investigators who stepped inside later described a feeling of being watched, of hearing soft footfalls or whispered voices in the background that vanished when they turned toward them. Every attempt to document or photograph these anomalies only intensified the sense of disorientation. Instruments failed, compasses spun wildly, and digital cameras occasionally recorded nothing but static. Perhaps the most disturbing feature was the series of symbols carved into the walls and floorboards. These markings did not match any known alphabet or code, yet they radiated an intentionality that suggested ritual or warning. Some investigators speculated that they were protective, meant to contain or suppress whatever force had claimed the rest of the town. Others feared they were invitations, a communication with a presence that existed beneath the earth or beyond comprehension. The symbols glowed faintly in certain light, imperceptible at first glance, as if responding to observation itself. Inside the house, personal effects offered glimpses into the lives of its former occupants, though they raised more questions than answers. Clothing lay neatly folded, shoes arranged in pairs, and keys rested atop tables as though the owners had planned to leave in an orderly fashion. Yet no one could explain why this family had been spared, or whether they had truly disappeared, or merely been moved elsewhere. The meticulous preservation suggested intention rather than coincidence, a carefully orchestrated anomaly within a town otherwise swallowed by silence. Some investigators reported auditory phenomena that were difficult to rationalize. Whispered voices, low and unintelligible, seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Occasionally, the murmurs coalesced into coherent words, names of townsfolk, warnings, and fragments of sentences that hinted at subterranean chambers, hidden passages, and dangers below. Those who remained too long in the house described a growing sense of dread, a vertigo of perception as though the boundaries between the floors, walls, and the unseen spaces beneath them had dissolved. It was, in every sense, a locus of mystery, a focal point of forces that no human mind could fully comprehend. Evidence suggested that this house had always occupied a unique position within the town. Its location was central, equidistant from the old wells and the entrances to the tunnels beneath, implying deliberate placement. Some researchers hypothesized that the family living there may have been caretakers of knowledge long hidden, custodians of secrets tied to the town's strange rituals and subterranean forces. Diaries and oral histories indicate that certain families were tasked with observing, documenting, and maintaining boundaries that no outsider could understand. If true, this would explain the house's survival, but it raised more disturbing questions than it answered. Were the occupants taken, spared, or transformed? And why was this the only building untouched amid an entire town's vanishing? Forensic analysis revealed additional anomalies. No signs of struggle were evident. Dust particles remained undisturbed, yet footprints inside the home suggested presence. Thermometers recorded warmth inconsistent with the ambient temperature. Electronics malfunctioned, displaying flickering readings or static when used to measure conventional phenomena. Every piece of evidence pointed to an event that transcended natural laws, leaving scientists, historians, and investigators struggling to categorize it. The house was not just a location, it was a phenomenon, a preserved fragment of a reality that had collapsed elsewhere in the town. Later explorations revealed that tunnels and wells beneath this house exhibited strange structural patterns, far more intricate than the general mines and caverns surrounding the town. Some passages were blocked deliberately, sealed with rocks and strange carvings, hinting at either containment or protection. No one could verify their purpose. Attempts to descend revealed sudden drops in temperature, inexplicable air currents, and a low-frequency vibration that matched the hum reported throughout the town prior to its disappearance. The house was not merely surviving, it was anchored, perhaps connected to whatever force had claimed the town, existing as a solitary node in a network of unseen influence. Historians now speculate that the house served as a witness or a marker, deliberately left as a reference for those who would one day investigate the vanished town. Its survival is as much a puzzle as the disappearance itself. Could it have been spared to tell a story? Was it a warning or a trap? Or did it represent the town's single point of resistance, a fragile outpost attempting to hold back the unimaginable until the last possible moment? Every theory raised more questions than it resolved. Today, the house remains one of the most haunting remnants of town name. Its candles no longer burn, its hearth is cold, yet the aura of preserved life lingers. Visitors and investigators describe an intangible weight upon entering, a sense that the house remembers, that it is conscious in some way, aware of the events it has witnessed and perhaps complicit in them. It stands as a testament to the town's mysteries, a single home surviving an impossible event, a fragment of life frozen in time, and a stark reminder that beneath ordinary appearances, forces beyond comprehension can shape reality itself. The house that shouldn't exist forces one to confront the unanswerable. It is not merely an anomaly within a vanished town, it is the heart of the enigma, a living testament to what lies beyond human understanding. And as investigators retrace the steps of those who entered and vanished, the house continues to stand, silent but knowing, waiting for those who dare to look deeper and perhaps uncover truths better left undiscovered. The first official investigation into the disappearance of town name was marked not by answers, but by confusion, fear, and evidence that defied logic. Authorities arrived from nearby towns and cities, expecting to find a scene of chaos, burnt houses, signs of violence, or at least scattered belongings. What they encountered instead was eerily pristine streets, homes frozen in mid-use, and a silence so profound that it pressed against the skin. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints of panicked citizens, no overturned furniture, only the faint hum of the earth, persistent and growing, as though the ground itself were alive. Initial surveys focused on physical traces. Investigators meticulously mapped the town, documenting the positions of chairs, tables, dishes, and personal belongings. They noted the house that shouldn't exist, where candles still flickered and food remained warm. Measurements were taken, photographs captured, yet instruments often malfunctioned. Compasses spun wildly, thermometers recorded fluctuating temperatures, and cameras inexplicably captured only static or blurred images when pointed toward certain objects. Even the air itself seemed to resist measurement, carrying an almost imperceptible vibration that made it difficult to focus or maintain composure. Excavation teams were brought in to examine the ground beneath the town. Early attempts to dig in the streets or around old wells yielded nothing consistent. Soil that should have shifted or collapsed remained unnaturally compact, as though molded by an unseen hand. Yet in certain areas, faint depressions appeared overnight, subtle dips in the earth that vanished by day's end. Instruments detected minor electromagnetic disturbances, their readings fluctuating with no apparent pattern. Experts were baffled. No known natural phenomenon could account for the anomalies, and no plausible human intervention could explain their precision. One of the most disturbing discoveries came from the tunnels beneath the town. Investigators carefully descended into the mines that had long been the source of local superstition. What they found was not consistent with natural geology. Walls appeared carved with purpose, chambers formed in geometric precision, and strange metallic residues clung to the surfaces. Occasionally, the explorers reported hearing faint voices or footsteps echoing in spaces where no one else could be. Lights would flicker without cause, and air currents seemed to move against normal flow. Each discovery compounded the sense that the town's disappearance was orchestrated by forces beyond human comprehension. Forensic teams analyzed the remains of the vanished townspeople, or rather, the absence of remains. Furniture bore impressions of bodies, yet no organic material was present. Beds showed indentations consistent with human weight, but radiographic and soil analysis revealed nothing. Even personal effects, coins, jewelry, clothing, were largely intact, as though life had simply stepped out of its own dimension. The lack of any forensic evidence left experts struggling to classify the event. Was it disappearance, relocation, or some phenomenon entirely unknown to science? A deeper layer of mystery emerged when investigators reviewed the house that shouldn't exist. Its preservation suggested deliberate intervention, but there were signs that went beyond comprehension. The diary of its inhabitants was open to a page written only moments before the disappearance, yet ink remained wet without smudging. Small symbols carved into the walls emitted faint heat detectable with thermal instruments, though their origin and purpose remained unexplained. The house appeared as both a witness and participant in the event, a node of consciousness, a puzzle deliberately left for those who would come to investigate. Authorities also began to uncover irregularities in official records. Maps of the town prior to the disappearance were inconsistent with modern surveying. Roads appeared to have shifted, certain buildings had no corresponding records, and property documents contained inexplicable annotations. Local officials who had long served in the town were interrogated, but their memories were inconsistent, as if fragments had been erased or altered. Whispers of suppressed information circulated quickly, strange letters, photographs, and journals disappeared under mysterious circumstances, further suggesting that the town's vanishing was not simply a natural or accidental event. Witness accounts from nearby residents added another layer of unexplainable phenomena. Travelers passing the area in the days surrounding the disappearance described fleeting lights in windows that should have been empty, shadows moving against the grain of reality, and strange hums that resonated through the ground. One report noted a fog rising over the town that distorted shapes and sounds, giving the impression of movement beneath the surface. Even animals, usually a reliable indicator of natural activity, behaved erratically. Cows huddled in fields with no apparent threat, and dogs howled at empty corners, refusing to approach the ruins. Military and scientific advisors were eventually consulted, though their conclusions added little clarity. Electromagnetic surveys suggested the presence of an unknown energy source beneath the town, but its nature remained indiscernible. Ground-penetrating radar revealed voids and tunnels inconsistent with any natural formation. Attempts to measure radiation, chemical composition, or magnetic anomalies yielded readings that fluctuated unpredictably, as though the very instruments were being manipulated by an unseen force. Even the most advanced technology of the time proved inadequate, leaving investigators frustrated and fearful of the unknown. Perhaps the most unnerving aspect of the first investigation was the psychological effect on those involved. Teams reported vivid dreams, hallucinations, and an overwhelming sense of being watched long after leaving the site. Some experienced auditory phenomena, whispers in empty rooms, distant footsteps in unoccupied corridors, and voices repeating their own names. The investigation itself became a narrative of fear and obsession, with personnel documenting events they could not fully explain. As one official wrote, "We are dealing not with a town, but with a presence. It watches, waits, and manipulates. We may never leave here unchanged." By the time the first investigation concluded, the town remained unsolved, a puzzle defying conventional science and reason. Every discovery pointed toward something deliberate, orchestrated, and intelligent, yet beyond the limits of human understanding. The tunnels, the house that shouldn't exist, the undisturbed streets, and the absence of human life formed a mosaic of incomprehensible design. Evidence that made no sense became the defining hallmark of town name, a case that would challenge generations of historians, investigators, and paranormal researchers. In retrospect, the first investigation was less about uncovering facts and more about documenting anomalies. The town had left traces, subtle, meticulous, and impossible, that hinted at the unimaginable forces at play. And as investigators left the valley, they carried with them not solutions, but questions. What force could remove an entire town without a trace? Why preserve a single house amidst total disappearance? Were the inhabitants gone, transformed, or absorbed into something beyond comprehension? These questions, unanswered and haunting, would shape every future inquiry into town name and cement its place as one of the most perplexing mysteries in history. Beneath the vanished town of town name, a secret waited, one that would shock investigators, historians, and anyone who dared to imagine the scope of what had occurred. The tunnels, once considered mere mining remnants or natural caverns, were far more complex than anyone had anticipated. As exploration teams descended into these passages, they discovered a labyrinthine network that extended far beyond the boundaries of the town, twisting and turning in impossible directions, as if the earth itself had been deliberately sculpted. Each corridor seemed to pulse faintly, responding to footsteps, vibrations, and the mere presence of intruders. Initial examination suggested human intervention, but no records, construction methods, or tools could account for the scale or precision of the tunnels. Walls carved with geometric accuracy, chambers perfectly aligned with underground streams, and patterns etched in stone defied conventional engineering. Thermometers, compasses, and surveying instruments frequently malfunctioned, readings fluctuating wildly with no discernible cause. Some passages contained strange metallic residues, unlike anything known to modern science, glinting in the flicker of lantern light. Investigators began to suspect that the tunnels were not merely physical structures, they were designed to interact with some other force, possibly something beyond human understanding. The further teams ventured, the more unnerving the discoveries became. In certain chambers, the floors were covered with symbols carved deep into the stone. These symbols, though resembling no known language, appeared ritualistic, almost as if recording events or marking boundaries. Some researchers speculated they were warnings, others believed they were instructions. Thermal imaging revealed that these carvings radiated faint warmth, detectable only under specific conditions, hinting at an energy or consciousness embedded in the stone itself. The air in these tunnels carried a unique quality, thick, almost tangible, as if holding a presence just beyond perception. Those who lingered reported hearing whispers, faint murmurs, and even the sound of footsteps echoing in spaces where no one walked. Some explorers described a pressure on their chests, a sensation of being watched, or an invisible force nudging them back toward the entrance. Instruments frequently registered subtle, unexplained electromagnetic anomalies, fluctuating between high intensity and complete silence. It was clear that the tunnels were more than mere geological formations, they were a network designed to hide, protect, or perhaps interact with something far older and far more powerful than the town itself. One of the most startling discoveries came in a chamber deep beneath the town hall. The walls were lined with carvings depicting human figures, some of them distorted, elongated, or fused with geometric shapes. Researchers initially assumed these were artistic expressions, perhaps attempts to communicate fear or mythology. However, radiocarbon dating of surrounding material suggested the carvings predated the town by centuries, possibly millennia. The realization struck the teams: whatever inhabited these tunnels had existed long before humans settled the valley. The settlers had unknowingly built their town atop an ancient, living architecture, and the disappearance of town name may have been merely the culmination of forces older than recorded history. In the center of this chamber was a pit, circular and impossibly deep. Attempts to measure it revealed strange anomalies, sonar bounced inconsistently, compasses spun, and lines of sight seemed to distort. The pit exuded a low-frequency vibration that resonated with the hum reported by the townspeople in their final days. Investigators described a sense of vertigo when looking into it, a feeling that the pit's depth was infinite, that gravity itself behaved differently. Some claimed to see shadows moving across its edges, figures descending into its void, only to vanish from view. It became evident that the pit was a focal point, a conduit or anchor for whatever force had claimed the town. Objects found within the tunnels added further mystery. Fragments of tools, bones that did not match any known species, and artifacts made from unknown metals were scattered throughout the passages. Many of these items appeared deliberately placed, as if serving a ceremonial or functional purpose. Investigators reported that when certain objects were moved or touched, the tunnels seemed to react, vibrations intensified, faint whispers grew louder, and the air felt charged. The implication was chilling: whatever existed beneath town name was aware of intrusion, responsive, and possibly intelligent. Perhaps most haunting were the remnants of human presence, or the traces of the town's vanished residents. In some chambers, researchers found impressions in dust and soil that mirrored the shapes of beds, chairs, and tables from above-ground homes. Clothing fibers, personal belongings, and even faint handprints were present, yet no organic matter remained. It was as if the tunnels themselves had absorbed the townspeople, preserving their essence in a way that defied natural laws. Investigators described this as one of the most disturbing aspects. The town had vanished physically, but in the depths, fragments of life lingered, trapped or stored by forces beyond understanding. Explorations also revealed signs that the tunnels extended far beyond the valley, connecting to areas that should have been inaccessible. Maps drawn by investigators suggest a network that could span miles, with corridors veering into unstable caverns, underground rivers, and chambers that seemed designed to confound orientation. This suggested a deliberate design, possibly for containment, observation, or transport. The magnitude of the structure implied not a human origin, but a force capable of reshaping geology, manipulating perception, and interacting with life itself. Every step deeper into the tunnels intensified the tension. Teams reported recurring hallucinations, vivid dreams, and visions of the town's final night. Whispered voices recounted names, locations, and actions that no one could have known. Light itself behaved oddly, flickering, bending, or disappearing entirely. Instruments failed or produced impossible readings, and explorers often lost track of time, some claiming to emerge from chambers after hours that felt like seconds. The tunnels were alive in ways no one could rationalize, and the forbidden discovery at their heart was not merely physical, it was existential, challenging every assumption about reality, life, and human comprehension. By the time investigations concluded, the forbidden tunnels beneath town name had revealed a chilling truth. The town had not simply disappeared, it had been absorbed into a network of ancient forces, hidden chambers, and mechanisms that defied reason. What lay beneath was at once a vault, a trap, and a witness, preserving fragments of life, energy, and consciousness. The evidence was undeniable yet incomprehensible, a testament to a power older than humanity and indifferent to it. Scholars, scientists, and explorers would spend decades attempting to decode the carvings, analyze the anomalies, and understand the purpose of the pit. Each discovery reinforced the haunting reality: some forces were beyond control, beyond explanation, and beyond mercy. And so, town name existed simultaneously as both vanished town and living memory beneath the earth, its secrets preserved in stone, soil, and energy. The forbidden discovery became the central enigma of the case, the point at which all speculation and investigation converged. It was here, in these hidden depths, that the story of the town's sudden disappearance began to make sense, not in the way one expects, but in a manner that redefined fear, reality, and the very boundaries of human understanding. The tunnels were not merely beneath the town, they were the town's final testament, a record of the incomprehensible, a warning and a revelation that would haunt all who dared to uncover it. In the decades following the disappearance of town name, the void left by the vanished town became fertile ground for speculation, legend, and theories that attempted to reconcile the unexplainable. Scholars, investigators, and storytellers have all grappled with the event, producing narratives that range from scientific hypotheses to myths that border on the supernatural. Yet no single theory fully accounts for the totality of what occurred. The mystery has endured, haunting those who seek answers and inspiring others to leave it as a cautionary tale of forces beyond comprehension. One of the earliest scientific theories suggested geological phenomena as a cause. Some geologists posited that subterranean caverns beneath the town may have collapsed suddenly, swallowing buildings and residents in a form of extreme sinkhole. Others proposed seismic or tectonic activity, or even unusual magnetic anomalies, that could have induced disorientation, hallucinations, or temporary disappearance. Yet these theories faltered when confronted with the evidence. The streets and buildings were largely intact, no collapsed structures were found, and the house that shouldn't exist remained untouched. Instruments detected strange energies, but nothing consistent with natural phenomena. The impossibility of these scientific explanations only deepened the intrigue. Local legends, passed down through oral histories, offered a different perspective. Elders spoke of ancient entities that resided beneath the valley, predating the settlers and perhaps even the known history of the region. These beings, described as patient and intelligent, were said to claim territories when provoked or when certain rituals were neglected. Children's rhymes, folk songs, and ceremonial practices often referenced the watchers beneath, or the hum that calls, echoing accounts from the townspeople's diaries and eyewitness testimonies. While these tales were dismissed as superstition by outsiders, the alignment between legend and documented anomalies suggests that the settlers may have had some intuitive understanding of the forces beneath their feet. Some theorists have speculated that the town's disappearance was linked to an otherworldly or interdimensional phenomenon. The preservation of a single house, the lack of struggle, and the imprint of human presence in the tunnels point to a force capable of relocating or absorbing matter without conventional physics. These ideas, while speculative, attempt to reconcile why the town could vanish completely yet leave evidence of ordinary life frozen in time. Witness accounts of shadows, whispers, and altered perceptions further fuel the notion that town name may have intersected with a reality beyond human understanding, a place where conventional laws do not apply. Paranormal researchers and historians have explored connections between town name and similar events worldwide, from lost settlements to unexplained disappearances in dense forests, deserts, and remote islands. Patterns emerge: abrupt vanishings, preserved dwellings, absence of human remains, and signs of an unseen intelligence orchestrating events. While no definitive link has been proven, these parallels suggest that town name may not have been an isolated anomaly. Instead, it could be part of a broader phenomenon, one that humanity has glimpsed only rarely and never fully comprehended. Some theories delve into psychological and socio-cultural explanations. It is suggested that the town's isolation, coupled with the cumulative stress of unexplained phenomena, created a mass psychogenic effect, or a shared collective fear, that manifested in both perception and behavior. While this may account for some reported hallucinations or whispers, it cannot explain the physical anomalies, the house that shouldn't exist, or the precise preservation of structures. Psychologists argue that the convergence of fear, superstition, and human intuition may have amplified the perception of inexplicable forces, but they stop short of providing a comprehensive explanation. Religious and mystical interpretations also abound. Some suggest that town name had been built on consecrated or cursed ground, a site of ancient rituals or divine intervention. Others posit that the town's disappearance was a form of judgment or cosmic realignment, an event that transcended morality, geography, and time. While these explanations are inherently untestable, they reflect humanity's enduring attempt to ascribe meaning to the incomprehensible. Oral accounts speak of symbols carved in stone, rituals performed by select families, and warnings passed down through generations, hints that spiritual or metaphysical forces may have been at play long before the town vanished. Despite centuries of research, the event resists categorization. Every attempt to understand it exposes limitations in knowledge, technology, and perception. Each discovery in the tunnels beneath the town raises more questions than it answers. Some evidence suggests deliberate intent, while other fragments hint at randomness. The coexistence of preserved life, abandoned belongings, and a single house that remains untouched defies conventional understanding. Investigators repeatedly confront a paradox: the town was gone, yet traces of its residents linger, frozen in space and time, leaving humanity to grapple with a reality that cannot be fully comprehended. The enduring legacy of town name lies not only in its mystery but also in the stories it inspires. Documentaries, books, research papers, and oral histories continue to explore its disappearance, each interpretation layering another dimension onto an already complex narrative. The town has become a symbol of the unknown, a cautionary tale, and a source of obsession for those drawn to the limits of human understanding. Theories may vary, legends evolve, and explanations remain elusive, but one truth persists: town name vanished in a manner that defies explanation, leaving behind a puzzle that challenges reason, science, and imagination alike. As the tunnels, the preserved house, and the hum beneath the earth endure, the event remains alive in memory and research. Scholars continue to debate, while storytellers craft myths that keep the town present in collective consciousness. The unexplainable nature of town name ensures that it cannot be forgotten, its lessons lingering in the boundary between reality and possibility, between the seen and unseen. And perhaps this is the town's final gift, a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only witnessed, studied, and respected for their incomprehensible scope. The disappearance of town name left a mark that extended far beyond the empty streets, silent homes, and labyrinthine tunnels beneath the valley. Generations of historians, investigators, and storytellers have struggled to interpret its meaning, yet the event continues to resonate as both a cautionary tale and an enduring mystery. Unlike disasters defined by destruction, death, or war, the town's vanishing is remembered for its perfection, its complete erasure, and the singular anomalies that defy rational explanation. The legacy is not merely in what was lost, but in what remains, the unanswered questions, the preserved house, and the subterranean labyrinth that whispers to those who dare investigate. The influence of town name has seeped into local culture and folklore, shaping how communities perceive the boundaries between the known and unknown. Songs, oral histories, and cautionary tales describe the hum beneath the ground, the watchers in the walls, and the town that sleeps beneath the earth. For generations, children have grown up hearing these stories, their imaginations fueled by accounts of vanished neighbors, preserved homes, and inexplicable lights in the valley. The town's disappearance has become both a warning and a source of fascination, instilling respect for forces beyond comprehension while inspiring curiosity and obsession among the bold or reckless. Researchers and scholars who have attempted to study the site face profound challenges. Scientific instruments continue to malfunction, and environmental readings fluctuate unpredictably. Geologists, physicists, and engineers documenting the tunnels report low-frequency vibrations, electromagnetic anomalies, and air currents that defy conventional physics. Explorers speak of hallucinations, vertigo, and disorientation, as though the very space resists observation. These limitations have fostered theories that range from the plausible to the extraordinary, but none can fully reconcile the totality of what occurred. The legacy of the town, in this sense, is one of enduring enigma, a phenomenon that resists human comprehension while demanding investigation. The preserved house remains the focal point of much speculation and research. Visitors consistently report sensations of being observed, whispered voices, and objects subtly shifting when no one is present. Scholars hypothesize that the home may serve as a focal point or anchor for the energy that claimed the town, a repository for memory, consciousness, or other unknown forces. It is both a witness to history and an artifact of the unimaginable, preserved against the erasure that claimed the rest of the town. The house, in many ways, embodies the town's legacy, a tangible yet inexplicable testament to what was lost and what continues to intrigue the human mind. Legends surrounding the town have also influenced broader cultural narratives. Comparisons are often made to other unexplained disappearances globally, from remote islands to vanished settlements in deserts and mountains. Scholars have noted recurring patterns: sudden disappearance, absence of struggle, preservation of dwellings, and evidence of unseen intelligence at work. These parallels suggest that town name may not be an isolated anomaly, but rather part of a broader, largely unrecognized phenomenon. Its legacy, therefore, extends beyond local folklore, influencing studies of the inexplicable worldwide and inspiring a generation of investigators and storytellers to question the boundaries of reality. Beyond folklore and scientific inquiry, the human element of the town's disappearance has left an emotional legacy. Descendants of residents who were away during the event continue to recount family stories, dreams, and vivid recollections of the night the town vanished. These personal narratives preserve the humanity of those lost, transforming them from abstract statistics into real people with hopes, fears, and lives abruptly interrupted. Diaries, letters, and oral histories have become invaluable records, bridging the gap between the impossible event and the human experience that preceded it. The legacy of town name is not just in mystery, but in memory, a record of the lives that once flourished in the valley and the void left by their absence. The town has also influenced artistic and literary interpretation. Films, novels, and visual art inspired by town name emphasize the tension between ordinary life and incomprehensible forces. Artists focus on the preserved house, the labyrinthine tunnels, and the eerie calm of vanished streets to convey suspense, dread, and wonder. This creative legacy ensures that the town's story reaches audiences far beyond historians and researchers, embedding it into popular consciousness as a symbol of the unknown, a challenge to the limits of perception, and a reminder of how fragile human understanding can be in the face of forces beyond control. Investigative teams who return to the site continue to uncover anomalies that reinforce the town's enduring mystery. Subtle shifts in tunnels, unexplained electromagnetic readings, and faint impressions of life within the soil remind researchers that the story is far from over. Each expedition deepens the sense that town name is a living enigma, actively resisting full comprehension, yet offering glimpses of truth to those patient, persistent, or daring enough to explore its hidden depths. In this way, the legacy is dynamic, it evolves as new discoveries emerge, yet its core remains immutable, a vanished town that challenges every assumption about reality. In many ways, the town's legacy is defined by the unanswered questions that persist. Where did the residents go? Why was one house spared? What lies beyond the tunnels? How does one explain the preservation of life's essence without physical remains? These questions defy closure, ensuring that town name remains a subject of fascination and obsession. The town is both a cautionary tale and an open invitation to explore, a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be fully solved, but to inspire vigilance, wonder, and humility in those who seek answers. Ultimately, the legacy of town name is a convergence of history, science, folklore, and human imagination. It exists in maps, diaries, tunnels, and whispers, in the preserved house and the hum beneath the ground, in dreams, legends, and artistic interpretations. It challenges human perception, confronts scientific limitations, and preserves the memory of lives interrupted by forces beyond comprehension. Its story is both a warning and a marvel, that some mysteries are so profound, so complete, that they redefine the way we understand the world, leaving us with awe, fear, and the eternal question, what truly lies beneath the surface of our reality?